Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay, let's see if there's anyone here. It, okay. Okay. I'm live on my channel. Um, it's about 5 minutes. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, it's a short sleeve. Normally I do it from my office, but I was just too tired today. So, okay. Hello, can you hear? Yep. Okay. Can you hear? Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Okay. um, um, oh. Okay. Hi. Ahmed Yunus is online. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. Oh, great. Okay. So far, we have one eager student. So let's see who else is gonna show up. I can see the number of students who have logged on, but I can't see who it is unless they comment on something. Okay. So why don't we give it another couple of minutes and see if anyone else shows up? But I'll be here. Okay, now we're up to two. Okay, two viewers. Let's see who else shows up. Okay. Mm. Okay. Okay. On my phone, I can play with filters and bubbles and things like that. I can't do it here. Two. Okay. So just a couple of quick ideas. I've seen the exam. I can't tell you what the exam will be like, but I can give you an idea of what's focused on. Not to worry about. So that's one. So one, all the grades for Ramadan, they're too tired, they're too distracted. Yeah, they're too tired and distracted, you know. Okay. 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 Okay, let's see here. Okay, so it is 8:01 now. I guess we can slowly get started. I see there are 4 people who joined us now. Great. So I hope more people will show up. So I will very slowly get started. First, I hope the month of Ramadan has been treating you well so far and that you had a nice iftar dinner with your friends or your family. A couple of quick updates. I have seen the exam itself, so I can talk a bit more in a bit more detail about what might be on it, what to expect, what not to worry about. And so I can talk about that. 2, the group presentations have all been graded. So all the grades and the comments are up there. And finally, I finally got around to adding the 2 marks to everyone's midterm that I promised. And that is thanks in part to Mr. Eunice's efforts. Okay. So we have 5 people here. Okay. So it's a lot less awkward. The more people who show up, the less awkward it is. So why don't I begin talking about what to expect on the final? At any point, you guys can jump in and post questions, ask questions, post comments, and chances are you're not the only person who is thinking, or you're not the only person who has that question. Okay, so feel free to speak up. I find on this forum people are a lot less shy. Okay, Yusuf, yes. Not that Yusuf is ever shy, but it's nice to see people start commenting and posting questions. Okay, so we're up to 7 people now. Okay. All right. So as you can see, you can comment at any time, post questions. So what I will do to begin with, and hopefully more people will keep coming. So the exam, just to refresh your memory, it's a lot like the midterm. There are 60 questions, 50 multiple choice, 10 matching. Okay, so it's a total of 60 questions. The 10 matching questions will be on chapter 10 of the textbook, and the remaining 50 multiple choice questions will be a mixture of the textbook and the bamboo stock, but from what I saw, mostly on the bamboo stock. And as far as the bamboo stock goes, the majority of the questions come from the second half of the novel. So when Isa is in Kuwait, and some of them are much broader questions that will ask you something about the novel as a whole. So, for example, what does the title mean? Something like that. Or which of the following best describes Isa? Something like that. So in short, if you read the novel in its entirety, and if you read or even took a quick look at chapter 9 and 10, which we didn't get time to do in class, you should be fine. There will not be any logical fallacies on this exam, although you guys are very good at those. But I'm sure the other sections are very pleased that those are not there. Okay, so I think that I've spoken enough for now. So if there are any questions, any concerns you might have, anything like that about the final exam, now is your chance. So I will awkwardly sit here while someone gives us our first question. Can everyone hear me, by the way? I know Ahmed said he can. I'm just wondering if anyone else might be having issues. Okay. Okay, so that's 2 yeses. Okay. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so as I said, okay. So we have our first question of the night. Okay. Usually when there's one, the rest follow. Yes, that is correct, Mr. Eunice. So no specific questions about the first half of the novel. You don't need to worry about, who Mendoza is or the stuff that happens in the Philippines or the crazy Kuwaitis or anything like that. You will have some specific questions about the second half. So from when Isa arrives in Kuwait until the end, and also more general questions about the novel. Okay, chances are if you have a question, you're not the only one who has that question. So chances are everyone else is thinking the same thing. So don't be shy. Okay. Okay, so or instead of sitting here awkwardly, I'll keep talking. So as far as the textbook goes, so not the bamboo stock, but this one here, okay, you will be asked about chapters 9 and 10. And I can tell you that the emphasis will be on chapter 10. Okay, so chapter 9 talks about uh, diversity and emotional intelligence, social intelligence, things like that. So communication, how much communication is nonverbal, things like that. So there's not too much about that in the exam, but it's good to know what is social intelligence, what is emotional intelligence, what is the difference between anxiety and depression, what are the symptoms of each, that kind of thing. So that's chapter 9. Chapter 10 is I would focus more on that, and this is the one that talks about diversity and race and ethnicity, things like that. And also the different forms of discrimination. So definitely learn what, for example, an ethnic group is, what the definition is, what the definition of race is. You should know that, for example, race is a social construct. There's no such thing as race, but we use it as a category. And as such, there is discrimination based on race. There's discrimination based on age, on ethnicity, on social class, things like that. So again, for chapter 10, learn those terms. So for example, what is xenophobia, for example? Okay, you don't need to know much more, but definitely look at those and learn those definitions. You probably have a pretty good idea of what a lot of these terms mean, like what a stereotype is, what xenophobia is, what sexism is. But it's a good idea to look at the definitions in the text and understand the different nuances and how the precisely what the definitions are. So what exactly is racism? What is it not? Okay, another question. Susan asks, will those terms come for matching? They may very well be. I can tell you that the matching, the matching will ask you stuff about chapter 9 or 10, and there'll be terms, yes. So no logical fallacies, nothing from the bamboo stock. So just even if you can learn a simple definition for the words in the terms in chapter 9 and especially chapter 10, that will come in handy. And also, we all sort of know what stereotyping, for example, is, but know that it's not necessarily, stereotypes aren't necessarily bad, right? There are good stereotypes and there are bad stereotypes, but they are still stereotypes. So it's good to know precisely what these definitions are, and but you don't need to know much more than that. We're not going to ask you to problematize or write an essay about racism or anything like that. The format's just like the midterm. And when you're looking at reading the textbook, even if you don't read the entire chapter, which you should, even if you focus on the boxes, that alone will help you. So let me see if I can find one here. For example, on page 245 of the textbook, this is chapter 10, we have a box here. You can't read it there, I guess, but it's box 10.2. And it's generational diversity, okay? Because there's different kinds of diversity. Of course, when we think of diversity, we tend to think of racial or ethnic diversity, but the figure 10.1, which is on page, where is it? It's near the beginning. Yeah, figure 10.1 on page 234, that this figure there tells you what exactly the different kinds of diversity are. So you can have diversity based, of course, on race and ethnicity, but as well as gender, age, ethnicity, social class, generation, political ideology, things like that. And unfortunately, you can also discriminate on any one of those categories, right? So there is discrimination based on gender, of course, on age, and so on. So if you look at nothing else, look at those figures and the boxes and the definitions. Okay, next question. For chapter 9, is page 212, 214 included in the exam? Let's see. Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so Nufazat, and I forgot to mention this. Um, I'm tempted to ask why you ask, but it's a fair question. The stuff about dating and romantic relationships and all that kind of stuff, you can read it if you want, but I can confidently tell you you don't need to know that for the exam. Okay. Okay. Okay, so any other questions? Waiting for the next one. Okay. Fadila asks, what is the matching going to focus on? Is it the bamboo stock only or the textbook or both? Okay, so the multiple choice, there will be 50 multiple choice questions. That will be a mix of the bamboo stock and the textbook, but mostly the bamboo stock. The matching will be entirely from the textbook. So there will not be any matching for the novel. Yes, that is correct. There will be 50 multiple choice questions and 10 matching questions. That's it. By the way, can you guys see everyone else's questions and comments, or is it just me? Hmm. Okay, okay, you can see them. Okay, great. So that's very useful for whoever wants to watch this later or whoever can't join us right now, because this will be saved so people can watch it after. And so if the questions pop up, it's a lot more useful for them. Do we need to focus on the examples the textbook provides, statistics and numbers? Mm, very rarely. Did you have any specific ones in mind? It's always a good idea to know sort of major stuff. For example, what proportion of communication is nonverbal, for instance, something like that. But even in those cases, if you are asked something like that, it'll be multiple choice. So you won't be asked for a precise percentage or anything like that. But no, we're not going to expect you to remember all the little statistics and numbers and things like that. But you can probably remember the important stuff, I think. I'm also wondering, oh, here we go. Okay, no fast. Will there be detailed questions in the bamboo stock? Like, what is the tattoo of Merla? I had a look at the exam yesterday or the night before, and like I said, this is sort of a collaborative effort. I didn't create the exam. Some of the questions are mine, most of them are not. I can say, however, that most of the questions I think are about the bamboo stock are easier. There might be a few that are very specific, but I think the majority are actually pretty fair. So they will not ask you very specific things, but they'll ask you about important episodes and things like that. So some of the stuff we've talked about, like what job does Isa get? What is why can Hassan not travel? What happens at the very end of the novel? Why did Ghanima? What made her finally change her mind about Isa? Like things like that, or who is the servant who doesn't get a day off? I think that's the most specific question you might get. But for the most part, I think these questions are actually easier than the ones you got in the midterm. It's Ramadan. People don't have much to do during the day. So after the evening call to prayers, people go out. So I'm at home right now. Normally I'd be in my office. I'm just kind of curious if anyone is not at home. Because you can do this from anywhere. You could be on your phone at the avenues and you could do this. Okay. I was asked to go to the avenues this evening and I just didn't feel like it. So this kind of worked out. Okay. Any other questions? In my experience, this goes on usually for 45 minutes to an hour, at least in my upper year classes. This is the first time I'm doing this for UNIV 110. So I had no idea how it would go. But I think if you, as I said before, at home, okay, as I said before, if you read the novel, and I think by now you really should have, if you haven't, and if you haven't, make sure you've read it by Monday at the very latest. But I think you probably read it by now. So if you've read the novel and you had even if you spent an hour looking at chapters 9 and 10 and focused on some of the more important stuff, and especially learning the definitions of some of those terms, some of which we've talked about in class, I think you should be fine. We're not going to ask you anything else. Yeah, I always get the off-subject questions during these live streams. No, I did not watch the royal wedding. To be perfectly honest, even though I'm Canadian and the Queen is still officially our head of state, I really couldn't care less about royal weddings. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but it's not something that interests me. But the joke is Miss Hala is in London this weekend watching the royal wedding. And that's why she will not be in class on Monday. So we will write the midterm in her classroom, which is B205, with her class. Okay, maybe time for one or two more questions. What do we focus on from chapter 9 or 10? Sorry for repeating the question. Chapter 9 and 10, definitely know the definitions. The exam will focus on chapter 10. I can tell you that. There will be some from chapter 9, but mostly chapter 10. But definitely know the definitions of the major terms. So, what is social intelligence? What is emotional intelligence? What are examples of that from chapter 9? Don't worry about the stuff on dating or romantic feelings or anything like that. You might want to read that for your own enlightenment, but we will not ask you that. And chapter 10, definitely know what are the different kinds of diversity, what are the different categories. So, there's race, there's ethnicity, and all those categories. And know the definitions of the different types of discrimination. So, we have a category of race, there's discrimination based on race. What are stereotypes? Things like that. So just focus on the important terms. We'll ask you to define some of those, but it's actually not that much content, believe it or not. Other question, when are you going to send us the questions for the impromptus? Okay, so the impromptus, I kind of wish we were doing this the other way around. I wish we did the impromptus first and then the written exam later, but we didn't have time to do that in this class and in the other ones. So we don't do the impromptus until, when is it? Next week? I think the week of, yeah, Tuesday, the 29th of May. So we still have a lot of time for the impromptus. I will probably post those at some point after this exam on Monday. So you'll have enough time. Don't worry. I'll give you at least a few days and I'll post all the possible prompts, but we still have a lot of time for the impromptus. But I'd say at least 5 days before I will do that. Okay, I got two questions in a row. Just a small reminder of the extra grades from the midterm. Okay, yes, I did add those today. So everyone's grades for the midterm went up by 2 marks. Okay, so I finally remembered to do that today. Next question, will there be questions on TBS novel fallacy related? No, there's nothing about fallacies in this exam. Although that's probably bad news for you guys because you kicked everyone's butt with the fallacies last time, but there's nothing about fallacies this time. Or do you mean, or are you talking about the impromptus? On the midterm, for sure, no. I mean, on the written exam, for sure, no. Okay, maybe one or two more questions. See if there are any more. Melissa J, yes, the written exam is this Monday at 12:30, same time, but instead of our usual classroom, we will be in B205, which is just down the hall. It's where you wrote the exam with Miss Hala. The only difference is this time she'll be doing me the favor, or sorry, this time I'll be doing her the favor. So I will administer the exam for our section and her section because she won't be in town. But it's the same time, B05, B205. And it will be Scantron. So it's amazing how much easier those are to grade, but they will be Scantron exams. We will provide pencils though. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Maybe time for one or two more. I enjoy doing these, but it gets really awkward when nobody asks anything. It's even more awkward than it is in a classroom. Okay. Hmm. In the bamboo stock, everyone gets mad at Hind because she's in favor of Badoons getting nationalities or against. From what I can remember, yes, she is in favor of that. She's an interesting character because on the one hand, as other people have commented, she has this public persona of being really humanitarian and fighting for the rights of disenfranchised people like Badoons. But then on the other hand, she doesn't really want much to do with Issa, right? So that raises the question of people's sort of motivations and their public and private selves. But yes, to answer your question, she is in favor of that, and I think the novel suggests that's why she loses the election because she runs for parliament and loses the election. In fact, I think at one point she's having like a meeting and people just start walking out. But and I just don't remember if people find out about Issa and then that's why they, want nothing to do with her. But her openly, like in public, she's in favor of that. And anyone, if I'm wrong, please tell me. Okay, Melissa J. In the written exam, we will have all bamboo stock or what's after the midterm. It'll be a mixture of. Oh, okay. I understand the question now. Um, you will have questions that are on the second half of the novel, so everything from part four onwards, so after the midterm. And you might have some that will ask you some questions that ask about the novel as a whole. So novel questions like, I don't know, about which one of the following describes Issa best, or what does Issa struggle with in general, right? So you'll have some general questions, but also more specific ones on only the second half. So there's nothing about Mendoza or how Issa was conceived or anything like that. Hmm. Does the author hint who Issa married, which should make us know who she is, or is it still anonymous? It's not 100% sure. It's still kind of it's left up in the air. But definitely, yes, you should know that at the end of the novel, he is married and has a child. In page 238, do we have to remember the cultural root countries? Okay. I'm not 100% sure what you mean, Susan. Can you sort of elaborate on that? Oh no, are we going to ask you what is a Hispanic or Asian American? No, we're not going to ask you that. But just know what an ethnic group is and maybe one example in your mind. Keep in mind this textbook is published in the US, so the audience is an American audience, and some of it doesn't apply to us. We're not going to ask you what a Pacific Islander is, but just keep in mind approximately what an ethnic group is, and especially how does that apply to Kuwait. Kuwait is a surprisingly what we would call surprisingly diverse cosmopolitan country, lots of nationalities, ethnicities, and so on. As I was saying earlier, for those who may have joined us late, definitely, if you do nothing else when you're reading chapter 9 and 10, look at the boxes. So here, for example, on page 237, box 10.1, okay, you probably can't read that. Okay, but the boxes all look like this. Those are very useful because they give you concise definitions and they sort of point out what's important. So key components of culture, that's something you probably should know, as well as, what is an ethnic group? What is like the definition of an ethnic group? How's it different from race? Generations, there's such thing as generational diversity, sexual orientation, stereotypes, all the different kinds of discrimination. This is chapter 10. What are the different kinds of discrimination? So what is, for example, ethnocentrism? Those are very useful to know. Okay, it looks like we're down to 4 listeners, 4 viewers. So I get the impression people are tuning out or they've heard enough. So I'll maybe wait another minute or so, see if there are any other questions. Mr. Eunice asks, so there are some questions about our understanding of the novel as a whole, which are not directly written in the novel. Yes, so it will ask you something very broadly about a character, for example, like just to use Issa since he's the main character. Um, what is something Issa struggles with? Or what is something he doesn't struggle with? We obviously know he struggles with many things. Or another example, which is something I think I gave you on a quiz. What does the title mean? What is a bamboo stalk? How is it significant? So when we say broad questions, something like that. Again, if you've read the novel, you'll be fine. And in fact, the broad questions are probably easier than the sort of nitty gritty questions. Okay, we're down to 3. Maybe one more. Okay, Fadila asks, are there multiple choice questions that are broad that can have more than one answer? Um, there shouldn't be, because I know some multiple choice tests can give you more than one possible answer. Uh, that shouldn't be the case here. However, as we saw with the midterm, that did happen once or twice. So the question about why does Isa call his aunt Mama Ida had two possible answers, but that was a mistake. So that's one of the reasons I gave you guys an extra couple of marks, because there were a couple of questions like that on the midterm. So there shouldn't be anything like that this time. I had a quick look at the final exam, but if that does happen, then you know we'll worry about that if it happens. But that shouldn't happen. Okay, now approaching the 50-minute mark almost. Are there YouTube filters in your laptop? I can't see them. Like I said, this is the first time I've done this on my laptop. Last semester I did it on my phone just because it was easier. And there were YouTube filters on my phone, like bubbles and stuff like that. But I can't see them here. I mean, I have emojis and stuff like that, but unfortunately, no. Not that I can see. I don't know why. Okay. 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 I can see the list of participants. Okay. So there's two of us, including me. Sorry, three, including me. Okay, Susan, this review made me feel a lot better. Great. That's the whole point of it. I mean, it's kind of fun to be honest, and I like talking about this stuff. But another reason is to make students feel better before an exam. So, like I said, if you read the novel and even if you'd read just the boxes in chapter 9 and 10, you should probably be okay. So I'm glad you found it useful. Okay, maybe one more. We're officially past the 50-minute mark. So I'll wait another minute or so. Okay, maybe another 30 seconds. Looks like pretty much everyone's gone. I was going to say gone home, but they're already there. Okay. Looks like it's just a hardcore two or three students. Okay, Badur. Okay, thanks, Prof. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you found it useful. Mr. Yunus, always a pleasure. Okay, yeah, you're welcome, Fadila. Okay. All right, so I'm going to tune out now. I hope you found it useful. Looks like I think you guys did. So As I said before, if you did the reading, you should be fine. And I'll see you guys on Monday at the usual time, but we will be in B205. So come 5 minutes early because we will be joining another section. All right, so see you guys then.